Jai.
Krishna everybody. Thank you very much for coming. So we have just completed Navratri and we are about to hear from His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu. Most of you know about Devakinandan Prabhu, but still some people just briefing again. Devakinandan Prabhu is the temple president of our iskcon Singapore, which is in Tokyo. His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu is a senior most disciple of His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj. He is practicing lawyer by profession and resides in Singapore. By the order of his spiritual master and since his departure from this material world, Prabhu has been traveling extensively and preaching the message of Srimad Bhagavatam in many parts of the world. He is also tasked with overseeing management of Krishna conscious preaching center in Singapore, that is the Kapurva, as well as iskcon temples in Dwarka, Rajkot and Gujarat. Devakinandan Prabhu is also an expert preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam and a wonderful kirtan leader. Many have taken to Krishna consciousness just by hearing his kirtans, which you are going to relish now. So I request everybody to take as much rest as possible. So we welcome His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu to our program by loudly chanting 3 times.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Actually, it's some of you, of course, I know some of you I may not. So maybe after some time, it'd be nice for me to get to know you also. Are you all studying? You're all working mostly?
Most of them associated with NTU.
Okay. Some way or another associated with
working
NTU.
as a project staff and some are enrolled as a PhD.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. And most of you have been in Singapore for some time? Yeah? Practically Singaporeans. So we chant Krishna's names for a few minutes. The deities are really nice. They're very large. They give nice darshan actually. Let's chant Krishna's names. When we chant, the only thing we need to do is actually to concentrate on the name. We don't have to worry about anything else. Krishna is so kind that when you chant his names, you actually find that he will adjust everything else for you. All we have to do is stay focused. The example is given of the mother and the child. All the child has to do is actually just follow the mother. And mother will adjust so many things for the child. But when the child is young, the child doesn't realize how much the mother is adjusting for the child. It's only when you become a parent, when you're a father or mother, then you realize, oh, this is what my parent did for me. And and my children have no clue what is being done, just so that they have a nice platform and they are happy. So Krishna is very kind. He makes so many adjustments so that we can chant his names. So let's chant. Then after that we can read a nice practical verse from Bhagavatam and then maybe have some discussion. Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadrai ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Srila Gurudeva ki Nitai Gaura Premanande. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jai Shri Nam Sankirtan Yajna ki jai. It is stated in Shastras that when you, any place where there is a gathering of devotees, and anywhere where we sit down to hear about Krishna, it can be hearing his name, or it can be hearing his pastimes. But wherever transcendental topics of the Lord are discussed, then three things will happen. And you can ask yourself whether this is true. Keep it in mind, so that by the end of our time together, you can ask yourself whether this is a good way to understand whether this process works. Yatra idyante katham ristas, Krishnayaha prasammo yataha, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, nodvega yatra kaschana. It's a very important verse from Shastras, it's from Bhagavatam. It's in the 4th canto. So it is stated that wherever topics of the Lord are discussed or chanted, then the audience in the gathering, three things will happen to them. The first is that whatever material hankerings, Krishnayaha in Sanskrit means hankerings. And this is not spiritual hankerings, it's material. So whatever hankerings that we have in our heart, at least for the time being when we're hearing about Krishna, the hankerings don't disturb us. Otherwise, generally you find that as we lead life, every year, every day, every week, every month, there's always some hankering that takes control at some point. And no matter what we have, generally speaking, it is not enough. We tend to move from one point to another point. And sometimes, even if we are satisfied, those around us may not be satisfied. When you get married and you settle down, how many of you are married anyway? Okay. For those of you who get married, you will understand this, that even if you are satisfied, doesn't mean that everyone around you will be satisfied. Sometimes you may not be married, but you're living with your parents and your family members. And you are very satisfied, but you find that they are not satisfied. And if they are not satisfied, eventually the pressure on you will come. If you say, I like my job, and they say, no, the job is not good enough, they'll keep telling you that. If you say, I like my wife, they say, I don't like your wife, that is also a big problem in the house. So it's this hankering never stops. Sometimes we buy a car, and after buying a car, our neighbor buys another car. We may say, I'm very satisfied. When we see his car, we think, actually, it's time for me to move to get another car. Sometimes we say we have a job, the job is good. But it is like this. So generally speaking, it's very difficult to stop hankering. It's a very natural tendency because we are born into this world. But when you hear Krishna Katha, you find that for the next 1 hour you're not hankering. Somehow all the hankering is outside with your slippers. They don't come inside. Maybe the only thing you may hanker is when is he going to stop and when is Prasadam going to be there. But that's alright. That hankering is good because, I'm sure Mataji cooks very sumptuous Prasadam, and sometimes 90% of us started coming to this movement because of Prasadam, I can tell you that, right? Most of us, it wasn't the philosophy that attracted us. Yes, the deities are very beautiful, but there is that Prasadam at the end of the program that makes everything worth it. Whenever we have programs at the center, at the temple, all around the world, we have one statistics that's always very, very objective and very consistent. You never count the number of people you want to actually prepare for the prasadam at the point when the class is going on. Don't do that because it's a misrepresentation. During the class, 50% of the population will come. But just after the class, right, it will spike up to 80%, 85%. That's the time you should count how many people you're actually going to serve. So prasadam is something which is very beautiful because it is the mercy of Krishna. So that is not hankering. Second thing is nirvairam sarva bhuteshu. Nirvairam sarva bhuteshu means all of us are living entities, sarva bhuteshu. But nirvairam means that quality where we become free of envy. Envy is the second quality that is very difficult to get rid of. One is hankering, the other is envy. And it's very hard for us not to be envious. Even though we couch it in good language and sophisticated behavior, the truth of the matter is whether we are young and we can't stand another boy because he has a toy better than ours, or when we grow older we find someone's doing better than us, but we can't say to him that, I don't like this about you. But the same feelings exist. Envy is always there. And sometimes the challenge even with devotees to be not envious of each other, because we have this tendency to see someone doing well, we grudgingly admire them. But then it's a very fine line between admiration and envy. And sometimes you don't know which one is which. If you admire someone, you are his well-wisher. If he does well, you're really happy for him. But if someone is doing so well that you start feeling a little bit threatened or insecure in his presence, then there is some subtle envy. And that's always dangerous. Envy disturbs us. It doesn't make us peaceful. And the third quality is notvega. Notvega in Sanskrit means na udvega. Na means no, udvega means great fear. So, notvega yatra kaschana. This is a nice point. Whenever we sit down to hear about Krishna, speak about Krishna, there is no fear and anxiety in our hearts. This is really nice. Because otherwise every day, Monday to Friday, wherever we are, whether in Singapore, India, Africa, every day begins with some anxiety. And the cousin of anxiety is fear. When we were young, we were more fearful. As we grow older, maybe not so fearful all the time, but always anxious. Every day there's something in the world that will cause us some problem. And have you noticed how when you think you've solved one problem and you think, that's it, now I'm a little bit relieved, another one comes knocking on your door. Something always is coming and it's always making us anxious. So these three things, keep in mind. These are the three things that you can use as a test to know whether you are in spiritual life or whether you're in material life. When you are with spirit, when you're with a process that takes care of envy, that takes care of fear and anxiety, that takes care of hankering, then you find this process has some value. And this is something that nobody can force you, but it is something that all intelligent persons can know. They can tell, after I chant, after I practice it, you know what? These three things don't touch me so much. Then you know something works. That is why we say we don't take up philosophy just on a sentimental level. It's very important to take up something because it practically works. If it doesn't work, then why waste time on it? But to make it work requires patience. It also requires perseverance. It also requires guidance. And that is true of even every material science that we ever took up anyway. So why should it be different in the spiritual world? So this is something that you can keep in mind in the background. Let's look at this nice verse. It's a beautiful verse from the 4th canto. Text 40. Canto 4, chapter 8. I'll just chant the verse, maybe you can repeat it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narada Uvacha
Narada Uvacha
Jananya Vihita Pantaha
Jananya Vita Pantaha
Savai Nishreya Sasyate
Savai Nishreyasasyate
Bhagavan Vasudevastam
Bhagavan Vasudevastam
Bhajatam Pravanatmana
Bhajatam Pravanatmana
Narada Uvacha
Narada Uvacha
Jananya Vihita Pantaha
Jananya Vita Pantaha
Savai Nishreya Sasyate
Savai Nishreyasasyate
Bhagavan Vasudevastam
Bhagavan Vasudevastam
Bhajatam Pravanatmana
Bhajatam Pravanatmana
Narada Uvacha
Narada Uvacha
Jananya Vihita Pantaha
Jananya Vita Pantaha
Savai Nishreya Sasyate
Savai Nishreyasasyate
Bhagavan Vasudevastam
Bhagavan Vasudevastam
Bhajatam Pravanatmana
Bhajatam Pravanatmana
Would anyone like to repeat?
Narada Uvacha
Narada Uvacha
Jananya Vihita Pantha
Jananya Vihita Pantha Savai Nishreya Sasyate Bhagavan Vasudevastam Bhajatam Pravanatmana. Let's read the word to word. Naradaha Uvacha.
Narada Uvacha
The great sage Narada said,
The great sage Narada said
Jananya,
Jananya
by your mother,
by your mother
Abhitaha,
Abhitaha
stated,
stated
Pantaha,
Pantaha
the path,
path,
Saha,
Saha,
that,
that,
Vai,
Vai,
certainly,
certainly
Nishreyasasya,
Nishreyasasyate
the ultimate goal of life.
the ultimate goal of life
Hey, for you,
for you
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Supreme Personality of God
Vasudevaha,
Vasudeva
Krishna,
Krishna
Tam, unto him,
unto him
Bhaja,
Bhaja,
render your service,
render your service
Tam,
Tam,
by him,
by him
Pravana Atmana,
Pravana Atmana
fully absorbing your mind.
fully absorbing your mind.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. The great sage Narada
The great sage Narada
told Dhruva Maharaj,
told Dhruva Maharaj
the instruction given by your mother,
the instruction given by your mother
Suniti,
Suniti
to follow the path of devotional service
to follow the path of devotional
to
service
the Supreme Personality of Godhead
to the Supreme Personality of God
is just suitable for you.
is just suitable for you.
You should therefore
You should therefore
completely absorb yourself
completely absorb yourself
in the devotional service of the Lord.
in the devotional service of the Lord.
Please hear the purport. Dhruva Maharaj's demand was to achieve an abode even greater than Lord Brahma's. Within this universe, Lord Brahma is supposed to be in the most exalted position, for he is the chief of all demigods. But Dhruva Maharaj wanted a realm beyond his. Therefore, his desire was not to be fulfilled by worshipping any demigod. As described in Bhagavad Gita, the benedictions offered by the demigods are all temporary. Therefore, Narada asked Dhruva Maharaj to follow the path recommended by his mother, to worship Krishna, Vasudeva. When Krishna offers anything, it is beyond the expectation of the devotee. Both Suniti and Narada Muni knew that the demand of Dhruva Maharaj was impossible for any demigod to fulfill. And therefore both of them recommended following the process of devotional service to Lord Krishna. Narada Muni is referred to here as Bhagavan because he can bless any person just as the Supreme Personality of Godhead can. He was very pleased with Dhruva Maharaj, and he could have at once personally given whatever he wanted. But that is not the duty of the spiritual master. His duty is to engage the disciple in proper devotional service as prescribed in the Shastras. Krishna was similarly present before Arjuna, and even though he could have given him all facilities for victory over the opposing party without a fight, he did not do so. Instead, he asked Arjuna to fight. In the same way, Narada Muni asked Dhruva Maharaj to undergo devotional discipline in order to achieve the desired result. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurivamritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. How many of you know about Dhruva Maharaj? He's a very great personality in Bhagavatam. And he was very young. He was the son of Suniti. And Suniti and Suruchi were the two queens to a king known as Uttanapad. Suruchi was the favored queen. Suniti not so favored. So Dhruva Maharaj was considered second in terms of favor. But his other brother Uttama, the son of Suruchi, he was very favored. So what happened was, one day Uttanapad was sitting down on his throne, and Uttama comes to sit on his lap. Dhruva sees his brother sitting on one lap. He thinks, I should sit on my father's lap also. So he sits on his father's lap. And the moment he sits there, his stepmother, Suruchi, comes and shoos him off from the lap of the father. And she says that you're not deserving of sitting on his lap. So Dhruva Maharaj, he's very young, but he's very hurt. And he's king's son, so he's Kshatriya. And Kshatriyas are known to be very powerful in spirit. If they are insulted, they feel it. So he felt it. And then Suruchi told him that if you ever want to sit on the lap of your father, you can only do so in one way. You pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, so that in next life you can take birth in my womb. And when you're born to me, then you can sit on the lap of your father. It's a very roundabout way to sit on someone's lap, isn't it? Die, be born again, into my womb, and then you can sit on the lap of your father. And then when Dhruva heard that, he became very upset. So Bhagavatam says he was a young boy, but he was breathing very heavily and he was very upset. So when children are upset, they go to their parents, particularly their mothers. You all know, generally when we were young, if we had any problems, we went to mother first generally, right? If we needed something from father, you knew father, direct access is difficult, what do? You talk nicely with your mother, mother says, don't worry, I'll talk to him, everything is settled. So that way Dhruva Maharaj went to the queen, Suniti, and he said, this is what Suruchi said. How can this be true? It cannot be true. Then he asked her, is it true? Now Suniti was in a very difficult position. She is the mother to a child. But every mother and father not only is a parent, but they are also teachers. Because they are our first teachers actually. What they teach us very often molds who we are. Is it not true? Our upbringing very often molds who we are. Even if we don't like how we grew up, as we grow up we find many things that we are is also traceable to how we were brought up. So Suniti was in that position where she had two choices. Either she could have fanned the anger of Dhruva and said, how bad of your stepmother to say this nonsense, don't worry about it, everything will be fine. But then she thought, my duty is to guide this boy, because I am like almost the first spiritual master of my son. The first spiritual master, it is stated in Shastra, is very often our parents. If our parents fulfill the role and tell us what is the aim of life, then Shastra say they are really great parents. But sometimes parents themselves may not know what is the goal of life, because we live in an age where we are really not sure what the goal of life is. But at that time Suniti was a great devotee. So she told Dhruva, actually your stepmother is correct. And he was a bit shocked. And then she said, I'll tell you where she's correct. She's correct that if you ever want to sit down on the lap of your father, you have to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because everything in this world begins by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's a very nice instruction. And that was a good instruction. So at the very beginning, Suniti used the opportunity of a difficult time to actually give Krishna to her son. Because in difficult times, we should see the hand of Krishna. In difficult times, if we cannot see the hand of Krishna, we become very morose. Very often we become depressed, and we don't understand why things happen in a certain way. But Suniti wanted that the poison may be bitter in the beginning, but better I tell my son what is the truth. And the truth is, you have to worship the Supreme Personality of God. So Dhruva also said something else. He said, Mother, if that is the case, I will go to the forest, I will worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and I will pray for a kingdom which is larger and more exalted than my father. So he was thinking, if I get a bigger kingdom than my father, I don't have to sit on his lap, isn't it? He has to sit on my lap, because I'm such a big person. So as a boy was thinking, he was thinking that way. Now Suniti was thinking, I can't tell him that the purpose of life is not to obtain material goals. No matter how big a kingdom Dhruva was going to get, the truth is the kingdom will die when he dies, or the kingdom will live when he will die. Very often something that is precious to us outlives us, isn't it? Even though we become so attached to it, we don't realize because this body is going to go, very often everything else stays behind longer than the body. So what are we being attached to? That attachment which is temporary actually is painful. That attachment brings anxiety, it brings hankering, and it brings envy. But in this case, Dhruva Maharaj was told by his mother that, alright, whatever aims and ideas that you have, it's okay, but you can only get something that is bigger and greater than the kingdom of your father if you worship Krishna. Because what you're asking for is so huge. Uttanapat was actually the king of the known world at that time. In Vedic culture, you may know, during the time of Mahabharata also, this entire planet was known as Bharatvarsh. Not just the tract of land known as India today, but the entire world. So it was a huge place that was being ruled. And Dhruva wanted something bigger than his father's. So Suniti thought, only Krishna can give something bigger than that. And no other personality can give that. Because Krishna is the origin of everything. He's created all that is material, and he has created all that is spiritual. So then she gave him the right advice. You turn to Krishna, and you pray to Krishna. You go to the forest if you have to, it's okay. But after going to forest, you should just meditate on Krishna. Suniti did not even think that he was a small boy, and he will be in danger in the forest, because she had faith that Krishna would take care of him. Suniti also knew that the aim of life was not actually to amass something bigger than what your neighbor has. If that is the aim of life, it's a very shallow aim in life. But the truth is, we all have only one aim in life. All of us sitting here have only one aim in life, and that is actually to be happy. It is stated in Shastras, only two kinds of people don't want to be happy in life. One is a madman, and the other is a dead man. There's no one else. Everyone who is living in this world, without exception, of any race, any caste, any creed, if you ask them what is the goal of life, they will say, I want to become this, I want to get that. But what is that for? Ultimately, they will tell you, it's only because I want to be happy. That's it. So the truth of the matter is, as a race, humanity has one purpose. It is to be happy. The only difference is, by nature, anything which is born must die. And between birth and death, anything that is born must deteriorate and eventually die. So whatever happiness that you have, if it is attached to something which is temporary and will deteriorate, then by logic, your happiness will go with it also. That is very clear for us. Therefore, Suniti was thinking that how to make Dhruva understand that the kingdom is not going to bring him happiness. But she thought, better he start devotion service, and then Krishna will adjust it. Let him start the process first. Doesn't matter if he wants material things and all. Krishna will adjust everything. It's all right. Just like, when we were children, our parents had a goal. They had a plan for us, maybe to study during exams. But they won't reveal to us all the plan. Maybe they drew up a timetable for us. Then slowly, step by step, they will reveal, okay, today you do maths, tomorrow you do science. We won't know what's happening, but the parent knows. In the same way, Suniti was the perfect spiritual master. She gave Dhruva the best guidance. She pointed him in the direction of Krishna. It didn't matter whether he wanted something material or spiritual. Either way, she said, you just go to Krishna. Because Krishna is the origin of matter and spirit. So go to Father then. So Dhruva became very happy. So he said, I'm going to go. And Bhagavatam tells us that he went to this forest known as Madhuban. Madhuban is one of the 12 forests in the Vrindavan area. And there, he started performing austerities. And his austerity was very, very powerful. Now when a lot of people, this kind of news travels very fast. Of course, in those days, there was no internet, no WhatsApp, no social media. So Dhruva Maharaj didn't have a Facebook account. He didn't say, I'm going now to Madhuvan. And then the whole world knew about it. But then word spread in the kingdom. When everyone heard that this young boy, who is the prince and heir apparent, is going to the forest, everyone started talking about it. And the word spread to one great devotee of the Lord known as Narada Muni. And Narada Muni is a great devotee of the Lord. His only aim in life is somehow or another to give devotional service to one and all. So he was thinking, who is this wonderful Dhruva? At this age he wants to go there. Let me test his determination. Let me see whether he is capable of getting guidance. This is the nature of devotees. Devotees don't only do devotional service for themselves. They would prefer to share this bliss that they have with everyone. If you found something which gave you instant happiness, you wouldn't want to keep it to yourself, would you? You would, of course, if you were selfish. But if you were broad-hearted, you would think, I want to share this with everyone. You knock on the door of your neighbor and say, hey, I've got this, it will give you happiness. Because you know the person next door is the same as you. We're all suffering. We're all in difficulty. So if we have something nice, share it. So Narada had this very simple concept. I have found bliss and happiness. The word is susukam, not sukham. Sukham means just happiness. But Gita says this process of chanting and hearing, taking prasadam and being with devotees, this process is susukam. It's the highest bliss. So he thought, let me go and see if this boy is deserving of this susukam. So he goes to see Dhruva, just as Dhruva is getting ready to do great austerities. And then he asks Dhruva, my dear boy, why are you here in a forest with wild animals? You should belong to the palace. You should be sleeping on beautiful beds filled with feathers, and you should be having servants fanning you. Why are you sitting in the forest? You're too young. And Dhruva said, I want to obtain a kingdom which is greater than my father, just to put him in his place, because he never allowed me to sit down on his lap. So then Narada Muni said, so who asked you to come here? And he said, my mother told me to come here. And what will you do here? And he said, I am going to meditate on that form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm going to pray to Krishna, and I'm going to force Krishna to give me something greater than my father. This is how boys talk anyway. So Narada said, your aim is very noble, and you are Kshatriya, so definitely you want to keep your honor. But can I give you some word of advice? So Dhruva Maharaj said, you are a great personality, now advise me. So Narada said, you please stop this and go home. You're too young. This is not the time for you to take up chanting and meditation. It's very difficult. And you find even in our society, many of our elders actually tell us that sometimes. They tell us now is the time to study, yeah? You don't do too much sadhu business, because if you become sadhu, it becomes difficult. I remember when I was introduced to Krishna consciousness, I was actually 13 years old. So when I was introduced to Krishna consciousness at 13 years old, I found that the process was very nice. It gave me answers to many questions I was asking. And when I started chanting, I found that my parents became worried. My parents ironically introduced me to Krishna consciousness. My mother actually bought this whole set of bhagavatam, This is the bhagavatam that I have since 1983. This is the same set. One lady saw my mother as they were walking, and she said, do you have sons? And she said, yeah, how do you know that? She said, I guessed. And she said that, would you like to be interested to give your children the real culture of who we are and where we come from? And my mother thought, yes, actually my sons are very interested in this area. So she brought the lady back, and the lady introduced to us this bhagavatam, and there itself my mother bought it. And daily I would read one page. I didn't understand everything, but the lady gave me good advice. She told me, you read. You just understand the pastimes. You may not understand philosophy because you're 13, but read. Don't stop reading, because Bhagavatam and Krishna are non-different. So that's what I did. And after reading, I found this is very nice. And then I started chanting. But of course, when I started chanting, my mother got worried. She thought, oh, he's going to become sadhu. And then she told me, are you going to get married? She thought I was going to wear saffron and I'll renounce the world. I was 13 years old. But mothers are mothers, And I had to tell her that don't worry. Chanting and becoming devotee doesn't mean you cannot become materially successful. People think that these are what we call mutually exclusive domains, but they're not. Today I'm a lawyer. It has never stopped me from being a devotee. It hasn't stopped me from earning money. It hasn't stopped me from owning a car. That doesn't stop me from getting married. But the point is, without Krishna, whatever that we do, there is still anxiety, there is still difficulty, there is still challenge. But with Krishna, you have the fortitude and the endurance to be able to handle this with the right attitude. This is something very nice. So that's what he was telling. Don't go into all this now. Earn money, become good Kshatriya, then you retire and you can come to Krishna. And Dhruva told him, my dear Narada Muni, don't distract me from my determination. If you can offer me good suggestion on how to remember Krishna, you do it. I would rather take an honest path to remember Krishna than to be dishonest. See? So Dhruva Maharaj was very powerful. But he didn't realize that Narada Muni was testing his determination. This is the role of a guide, or what we call sometimes a spiritual master. The spiritual master's role is to guide us. It is to test us whether we have enough determination to continue, to persevere. When you have someone who has that determination to persevere, the spiritual master then becomes pleased. And then instead of just giving him love of God or giving him whatever he wants, the spiritual master inspires in him. Look at the verse, the last line. There are two words that are very important. The spiritual master's role is to inculcate in a devotee or disciple devotional discipline. This is very nice. DD, very easy to remember. Devotional discipline. So Narada Muni wanted to know if Dhruva Maharaj would have the discipline to obey him. If you want to learn something, you have to learn it from an authority or an expert. Even in material world. If I want to become a lawyer, I don't go to a doctor. I go to someone who is expert in law. And when I sit down with the expert in law, I don't question him, are you really expert? You know, how do I know? If you did that, you would never be able to get your PhDs. You'll never be able to pass anything, because you will always suspect who is authority. So in this material world, we take it as a given that if we have to take a course, someone who's giving it is an authority. It's the same concept in the spiritual world. The only question everyone always asks, especially in today's world, is how do we know if a spiritual master is bogus or if a spiritual master is genuine? That's the question we want to know. Because first of all, we are born in a generation where we want to think and we want to be convinced. And you know, and I know, that it's very easy to be cheated in this material world. There are a dime a dozen gurus, you know. You can see them at every junction. If you go to India, you spend enough time. I spend a lot of time in Dwarka. And I can tell you there are so many sadhus who come to Dwarka. Many of them come from all over India. And when they come and I talk to them, they tell me, I've given up everything, wife, husband, or whatever I have given up everything. And now I want to sit down and I want to achieve perfection. 6 months later, you see the same sadhu. And now he has built a small hut. And in the hut, there's a transistor radio and he's hearing BBC. And then when you ask him, I thought you left everything. He said, yes, but it's important to be connected to the world. Now that's a contradiction in one sentence. The third time I see him 6 months later, he's got satellite and now he's got television on top of BBC News. This renunciation in Shastras is known as Markatta Vairagya. It is what we call monkey renunciation. That is not what we want. In other words, you don't have to leave what you're doing now to become devotee. Krishna did not tell Arjuna, you please leave everything and you go to cave and become sadhu. There is a time for that, but that time is not now. Now the time is, we all have a duty. Your parents work so hard to put you where you are. Is it not our gratitude that we should also work hard and take care of them? That is also being a devotee. Arjuna was told, yes, you may want to become sadhu, but is it not now your duty to be a warrior? Because if you don't fight this war, irreligion and tyranny will rule this entire planet. And that is not what we want. So there's always a higher purpose to what we do. And it's important for us to understand that. And that's why we want to be wary of bogus gurus. There is one very simple way to understand what is the qualification of a spiritual master. It's by way of a story, very easy to remember. I teach the Gita to French students in a business school in Singapore known as ESSEC, ESSEC. And part of their immersion program is actually principles of Bhagavad Gita in daily life. So whenever I tell them this story, even if they don't have any clue about what spiritual master means, after the end of this story, they understand why Shastras put so much emphasis on getting guidance. So there was a sadhu, he was very expert in doing many things, and he was staying in an ashram. Then there was a mother who had a small boy, and this boy was very addicted to sweets. You all know how our sweets are, isn't it? If you've been tasting all the prasadam that Matajis have been making, you know the savory is nice, but the sweets are really sweet. So this boy was so addicted to sweets that, after a while, mother became worried. Because mother was thinking, my God, if he continues addiction like this, you grow up to become very unhealthy. So she thought, how to cure him of his addiction? That's the key now. So she brought him to this guru. And she said, my dear master, I heard that you can train, many people to control their senses. Can you help this boy to get rid of his addiction to sweets? So Sadhu thought about it and said, all right, you come back in 2 weeks. So mother was thinking, why not now? But maybe Sadhu is very heavily booked, in his appointment, so never mind. 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, she brings the boy, leaves him there. 2 weeks after that, she comes back. And when she sees the boy, she's amazed. He is not addicted to sweets at all. She brings him home, spends a week just to watch him. Is he really free of it or not? But he has no addiction to sweets. He doesn't even look at them. So 1 week after that, she comes back to the Guru to thank him. My dear sir, thank you so much for being so wonderful. And he's very happy. I'm happy that he's all right. So she says, I have only one query. When I asked you to take care of the addiction of my son, why did you take 2 weeks? Were you busy? Were you going to meditate, contemplate, pray? What was the process? How did you become so effective? And the sadhu replied very simply. He said, when you told me, mother, that I have to actually cure him of his addictions, I thought I would help him. But I needed 2 weeks to cure myself of my addiction to sweets. And once I've cured myself of the addiction to sweets, I've experienced how to do it. Then I can share that with your son. And that is why I'm effective today. This is the point. So Shastras are very clear. If we are to be guided by the spiritual master, the qualification of a spiritual master is that he must practice what he preaches. It's very important. Public cannot be cheated. They have a saying that I may not be a good cook, but when I taste the dish, I know whether it's good or not. Isn't it true? Half of us can't cook. How many of you can cook? Very good. The rest of us can't. And even though we're not expert cooks, you put a terrible dish, we'll tell you something is wrong. And if someone tells you, hey, I know how to cook, well, the result is not there. So we cannot cheat anyone. And that is why in our movement, the emphasis on a proper guide is important. But the person who is actually going to guide you must have the qualities of practice. That's very important. And that is why Narada Muni was actually the perfect spiritual master. Because not only could he guide Dhruva, but he was living his life, just chanting Krishna's names and giving Krishna to everyone. Suniti, his own mother, was a great spiritual master. Why? Because she herself tolerated her anger. She did not tell her son to feed his anger. And she gave him the best advice that any spiritual master can give you. That you please turn to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You chant his names. You pray very hard to him. And he will guide you. That is the mood of a spiritual master. The spiritual master never says, I am your destination. You have arrived. He's like a policeman, at the junction. You go to a policeman in junction and say, okay, how do I go to this place? He will tell you, turn right, turn left, watch out for the construction, don't fall into this place and go straight. But if you go to a policeman and say, where's the destination? He says, I am the destination. Now you start thinking, this is a funny policeman, isn't it? This is very important. A true spiritual master never claims any credit for himself or herself. The true spiritual master always is a servant. A servant to guide you, to give you the way to move. That is why a spiritual master in our movement is important. But there must be that qualification of practice in what we preach. That is important. So, Narada Muni then told him that you please now since you are very determined, since you are persevering, since you are ready now to continue doing this devotional service, now I give you blessings and I will guide you. At that point, Narada Muni accepted Dhruva as his disciple. And Dhruva then accepted Narada Muni as his spiritual master. And he said, Narada, you please tell me now what I should do. And then in a series of beautiful verses, he tells him how he should remember Krishna, in what form he should remember Krishna, and how much austerity he should do. And then he blessed him and he left. And Bhagavatam tells us for the next 6 months, Dhruva Maharaj, young boy, stood under a tree in Madhuvan forest and he performed the greatest determined austerity. Slowly every month he would give up something. He started by eating just fruits and berries. He graduated, so to speak, to only grass. Eventually he lived on air. And at the end of 6 months, he was able to control his senses so much that he could shut down even the breathing of air. And at that point of time, the entire universe became troubled, so to speak, by his great austerity. And when Krishna finally was informed, of course Krishna is in the heart, when Krishna saw that, wow, this boy has so much determination to see me, I will appear before him. Now Dhruva Maharaj all this time was closing his eyes and remembering Krishna in the heart, because Krishna is Paramatma. He is always in our heart. Sometimes we think, how do we know if Krishna is in the heart? Sastras tell us it's a very easy way to understand that. Krishna is known as the voice of your conscience. Conscience. Have you been in situations where you are not sure whether you should do something which is right or wrong, but when you perform it, somehow you know in your heart, this is right or this is not right. You can sense it. Whether you hear it or not is a different business. That is you. That is your soul. But the voice that tells you, this is correct, this is not so correct, this is very wrong, that is the voice of Paramatma. The more you hear it, the more louder that voice becomes. The less you hear it, the more you ignore it, the more silent that voice becomes. So in Dhruva's case, he was remembering very much Krishna in the heart. Then all of a sudden, after 6 months of prayer and meditation, and chanting this beautiful Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, that's what he was chanting. At the end of it, he suddenly lost the form of the Lord in his heart, and he panicked. He opened his eyes, and in front of him was the beautiful form of the Lord. Now the Lord was in front of him. Dhruva had waited 6 months, and while he was waiting for 6 months and chanting and praying, he was thinking, when the Lord comes, what will I say? Will I present to him my proposal that I want a bigger place? We have to present our business proposals to an investor. He was thinking, how do I convince Krishna to give me what I want? And how do I greet him? Do I say, hello Krishna, please come in, or welcome, or what do I do? He was thinking of all this as he was chanting, but Bhagavatam tells us when Krishna appeared, he became lost for words. He became completely lost for words because he was overwhelmed by the spiritual, divine and transcendental presence of the Lord. And so at that point of time, he didn't know what to say. So Krishna is very kind. Krishna took his conch and he touched Dhruva Maharaj on the shoulder. Just a touch. The touch of Krishna is non-different from chanting his name, non-different from his form. So the moment he touched Krishna, Krishna touched Dhruva, Bhagavatam said Dhruva Maharaj then began chanting beautiful prayers of glorification. One verse is very nice. Yonta pravishya mama vacha mimam prasuptam sanjeevayati akila sakti dhara swadhamna anyascha hastam sharanam shravanam tvagati no prana namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. This is about one chapter after this, but this is the first prayer that Dhruva Maharaj chants, and his prayer is very important because it tells us what happens when you take and follow the instructions of the spiritual master. And this is what he says. He says, my dear Lord, up till now, I was actually dead. I had my body, I had my senses, I had everything. Technically, I was alive, but spiritually, I was not alive to anything. It's the first indication of what we call the walking